Welcome back to Double eedrummer. Today's video marks the end of my editing backlog, so I can finally get to recording the ideas I've been coming up with in the last few months. Today's video is actually going to be a change of pace in that it'll be a lot shorter than my other microphone comparison videos. In fact, this history intro that I'm giving right now is likely a lot longer than the comparison recordings I've got. So a little history on why I'm doing this video. About a year ago, I picked up this X1A. At the same time, I picked up all the Audix mics I use on my toms. The purpose of the X1A was to allow me to move to a dual mic configuration for the kick drum. I had been using a D112 as my sole kick mic on the outside of the kick and wanted to try a dual setup, allowing the D112 to go to the inside and then putting the X1A here as an exterior mic. But I had a second thought on what to do with this. At some point, I'd like to try using large diaphragm condenser mics as my overheads instead of the small diaphragms I'd been using. So I went ahead and picked up two of these X1As. While one was used as the exterior to the kick, the other was my room mic. So in setting up this configuration, I had to decide where the Audix mics were going to go on the toms. And I had to decide what the right crossover point based on frequency response was going to be. So I did a comparison. I put that here. Based on that comparison and based on the available mics I had, I decided to go with the D4 on the 14-inch tom and use the D6 on my floor tom. Now, I also compared the D6 to the D112 on the floor tom. I put that here. Based on that, I still decided the D6 was the way I wanted to go on the floor tom. In addition to that, I did a comparison on the kick drum, where I compared the D6, the D112, an SM57, and the X1A in different mic configurations for my kick drum. I put that here. Based on that, I decided my preference would be to have the D6 exterior and the D112 interior. But I only had one D6, and that needed to go on the floor tom. So at the time, I decided my full setup would have the D112 inside, X1A exterior. Subsequently, I received a comment on one of my videos suggesting I try the Universal Audio SD3 as a snare mic. So I picked one of those up and did a comparison of the SD3 with multiple modes against the SM57 and the i5. I put that here. So that brings us to about 6 months ago. At that time, I finally made the switch to my large diaphragm condensers as overheads. So I took the two X1As I had and moved them to my overheads. This left me with a gap for the exterior kick mic. My preference would be to get that D6 off the floor tom and use that as the exterior mic for my kick, but then I need something on that floor tom. Now with the purchase of the SD3, I now had three mics that could be rotated around the snare, one of which, the SD3, had a D4 model. So I thought maybe that SD3 in its D4 configuration could work as my floor tom mic. So today's video is going to compare that SD3 versus the D6 and the D4 on the floor tom. As with my other videos, I've put markers in this one to allow you to jump to and between the sounds or mics that interest you the most. But I've also added a clip at the end where I sweep between three mics on one sound sample, letting you get a more close comparison between the three. I hope you find this useful. I was pleasantly surprised by the SD3 with the D4 model. While it may not be an exact duplicate of the Audix D4, I thought it did a good job of capturing the low frequencies of that floor tom, allowing me to move that D6 over to the kick drum. Going forward, it'd probably be a good idea for me to put out a video comparing the D4 versus the SD3 as a D4 on my 14-inch tom to see whether or not I'd want to switch those two around. But that's a video for another time. If you have any suggestions for future content, please leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.